My name is
Jenny,
David.
Lila,
Laurel,
Jen,
Lisa,
Dino,
Hari,
Kyle,
I was a
Jehovah's Witness,
Jehovah's Witness.
FLDS,
in the Amish church.
the chosen people.
I was a Scientologist.
I grew up a Mooney, a member of the Unification Church.
2x2.
And I am
shunned.
shunned.
Sean.
Shunned.
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 My name is Kelsi. I'm from Chicago, and I'm shunned.
All right, Kelsi. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was raised as such.
Okay, so born in?
Yes.
Okay. So no other existence other than to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Correct.
Fair. All right. Do you know kind of the origin story of it in your family, or how far it goes back, where it started?
Yep. So it started with my parents. None of my extended family are witnesses. Oddly enough, it was my dad that got interested in it and started studying. Him and my mom lived in Florida, and my mom was raised Catholic and was testing out a lot of religions in general. She went to Hare Krishna meeting. She I believe went to a Buddhist temple. She literally was looking for something. And then my dad ended up starting to study with the witnesses, and then she got involved in it as well. But the ironic thing about that is he hardly ever practiced, being a witness, and left, and she stayed in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So he just, what did he do? He fade, or did he stop believing in any way, or did he just stop acting?
I don't know, honestly, if he ever really believed it. I mean, there must have been a part of it because he's the one that started studying. But yeah, he just, I guess fading is the best way to put it.
Okay. Or it was just inactive, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I really only remember him being at 2 meetings, maybe.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Not even an annual memorial or something like that.
I mean, he might have, but I honestly don't remember it.
Wow. Okay. So, so it sounds like then so who was the primary driving force then? I guess it was your mom?
My mom, yes. Yep.
Okay. And so, was she the opposite of him? Was she super into it, or?
Yes, super into it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So an uber peenie.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So, what was the worldview that it gave you growing up in it as a small child? How did it affect you? Were you the kid who took this on and was terrified of the world outside, or did you feel special, or how did it make you feel about the world around you being raised as a little Jehovah's Witness?
I mean, I definitely would never say that I felt special. I always kind of felt like an outcast because we were raised in a very small town in New England. So there wasn't a ton of other witnesses. So I guess I just felt very much like an outcast and was always just felt very different.
Okay. And different in a bad way.
Yes. Different in a bad way. Yeah.
Not different in I'm special, I have the truth, I'm the only one who sees this.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Did you have that fear of Armageddon or anything? Did you see other kids around you at school or whatever, and were you afraid for them to be killed, by God at Armageddon? How did it impact the way you saw those people on the outside?
So I was very much raised in a state of fear by my mom. My mom would constantly talk about the Great Tribulation and the different things that were possibly going to happen to us and to her. and that we would have to be prepared basically if she had to choose between us and Jehovah. She was always going to pick Jehovah. So we always had that fear of dying, basically. And yeah, like I feel like it was a constant state of fear. Like there would be a thunderstorm and I would be terrified to look out the window that, brimstone was coming out of the sky. Like, yeah. So just a constant state of fear.
Yeah. Probably some fear there of displeasing your mom too, because she just said, if it comes down to me or Jehovah, or if it comes down to you or Jehovah, I pick Jehovah. That's something you were told from a young age, was basically you're expendable, I choose Jehovah?
Yes. One of the things that she used to say a lot to us when we were kids, and she would pick very vulnerable moments to say this, was if someone is standing with a gun to your head and they tell you to say that you hate Jehovah or they're going to shoot you, what are you going to do? And we would always be like, we would never say we hate Jehovah. We'd get shot. And I mean, this is her saying this to us when we were like 4, 5, 6 years old. In very, very vulnerable moments is when she would choose to ask these questions.
I don't think that there's any situation in which it's truly okay to ask that question.
No.
I think that this is kind of one of those things that is unique to growing up as we did. I don't think that kids growing up outside of this or something like this are necessarily having parents run drills with them over life and death matters at 4.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yep.
That's a lot. Shouldn't be put in that position. So then let's talk a little bit about what it was like to grow up in some of these different areas of your life. And as we're talking about mom and such right now, what was it like growing up at home for you? What was the temperature of the room? What was your house like?
Oh gosh. So I'm the youngest of 6 children, so it was very loud, very chaotic. My dad was not very present growing up. He was and still is an alcoholic, very emotionally and physically abusive. So if he was home, we really tried not to be around him because you never knew what was going to set him off. But I mean, we again grew up basically in a big field in New England. We lived in this house in the middle of a big field. So we spent a lot of time playing outside, which was nice. I'm glad that I'm from that time of like, we played outside and we weren't just inside on our phones or on, gaming consoles. So I'm very grateful for that part of it. But yeah, there was a lot of trauma going on in my house.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we know one of the reasons your dad was not doing the JW thing. Maybe part of it was because he was struggling with alcohol and other things, it sounds like.
Yeah.
As well. So you guys have, well, you mentioned, so I'm going to go ahead and play off the field and the fun that you had there as a family. So what were the fun moments? Did you guys go on vacation? Did you have game night? Were there moments in your house of fun? Or I mean, obviously I'm sure there were individual moments, but I mean, was there anything that you look back on fondly?
Yeah. So one thing, in my family, we had a beach house on the Jersey Shore. It was kind of like a communal beach house that my grandparents owned, but like,
oh wow,
all of our family would kind of take turns staying there. So every summer we would go to this beach house on the Jersey Shore, which was so nice. So that was something that I always loved. I always looked forward to. And then we didn't have game nights or anything like that. One thing that my parents would do was not every year, but we would have present day since we didn't have Christmas, where we'd each get like a certain amount of money and we could buy presents for each other. And then just like another thing that I loved was my brother was very, very imaginative and creative. And we spent so much time like building forts, and like all these forts would have backstories about like from different time periods. And, you know, he also used to love building booby traps and like shutting all the lights off, and we'd have to navigate through the house and not get caught in these booby traps.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And he was just like a master of making up games or making things fun. So that's something that I think about very fondly.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I'm glad that and that's one of the things I do like to highlight. I mean, certainly many of us have grown up in abusive situations, but one of the reasons abuse is abusive is because it is good in moments and then horrendous in others at times. And it is that dichotomy that makes it so confusing internally. But I'm glad that you had these moments of fun, just like innocent creativity. Well, I don't know about the baby trap part. Honestly, I love that. That just sounds like a little boy doing his thing.
Yeah. Well, you can thank the Goonies for that, because he loves the Goonies, and that's where the booby traps came from.
Oh, okay.
Was the Goonies.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fun. Beyond that, in the house, were you all the family that? I mean, it sounds like your dad wasn't really into it. Like, did your mom handle like? Did you have family studies? Were you all sitting around doing studies and prepping for the meetings, and like, were you super serious about the witness aspect of life in the home at all?
Yeah, we definitely had to do like family studies. I feel like a lot of times, if there was like downtime, it would be like my mom would put in like one of the videos from the organization, or like just try to steer it towards doing something theocratic.
Was she the one hosting these studies and such, even though your dad was around?
Yeah, it was her.
Did she wear the head covering?
You know what? I don't remember. I don't think she did, though.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think she did, but she
That's
might
kind
have.
of interesting.
Or she might have. She might have also had my brother lead it. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Okay.
and that might be why she didn't. The head covering. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah, no, a horrible thing that women have to do to show their subservience to the headship role of men or boys and their presence. And but I was just wondering how they navigated that, since your dad really wasn't. Doesn't sound like he was taking the lead in this stuff. I wondered if your mom, because she was forced to do this awful thing that women are forced to do in the organization, to admit their low position or whatever. Uh, so you guys, it sounds like we're super busy in that way. You said chaotic home. Your dad sounds like was part of that chaos.
Yep.
Was it a walking on eggshells type of environment, or one where you felt very free at all?
No, I mean, I feel like a lot of time in general we were walking on eggshells, and it wasn't just because of my dad; it was also because of my mom. But yeah, you just, especially with my dad, with his anger, you honestly never knew what would set him off, ever.
Tough to be caught in between when both parents are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Well, moving on to school, was school a place at all for you where you found any respite? Like, was that at least I get to get out of the house, or what was your school life like for you?
Um, so school, I don't know. I never was like a very serious student. Again, I think because it was being drilled in our head all the time that the world was going to end. So there really wasn't like you have to go to school. But um, yeah, no, I just never felt like I had a place. I always felt very different. So it was like it wasn't really much of like an escape because when I was there, I just felt like an outsider.
Did you have to endure any bullying or anything for being the JW kid? For being the kid who had to be weird and different and not stand for national or pledge of the allegiance or not do the holiday stuff? Like, did you suffer repercussions for that at all?
I mean, I wouldn't say bullying. I would just say like, kids are observant and they would just think it was strange and like, would say things about, well, why don't you celebrate? Or, like, I wouldn't say bullying. They definitely brought it up.
They were curious. They weren't
Yeah.
necessarily using it to browbeat you.
No. I mean, I would say like at worst, I got picked on a little bit, but nothing super severe.
Okay. I know a lot of times when people are being picked on at home, they often then go out into the world and they get picked on there to some degree, or if their home's not safe in certain ways, sometimes they go out and people, especially kids, can pick up on that, and sometimes that can result in further bad times for that kid, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of puts that vibe out there, and certain kids can smell it and use it. So I was just kind of curious as to whether or not that was your experience. What about when you went to the Kingdom Hall? Did you feel like I'm guessing that wasn't a great experience, just from the derisive little laugh. So did you what was going to the Kingdom Hall like for, I guess, you six and your mom?
Yeah. So, my oldest brother moved out when I was super young. There's quite a number of years between us. So he moved out of the house when I was 4. He never really was much of a witness. I mean, like he obviously had to go to meetings. He never was baptized. I don't remember if he ever gave parts. Again, he moved out when I was very young. So it was basically just my mom and 5 kids. Again, that's a lot. But our hall was small, super judgmental, which I think is a blanket for most Kingdom halls. Yeah, it was not great because my family was super, super judged because, and I'm sure we'll get more into it, but because my mom did leave my dad. So we were very, very judged because my mom was getting divorced and you just didn't do that. So it wasn't great.
That's interesting. I mean, I know the Jehovah's Witnesses have a certain view of, let's say, divorce, but your mom was the witness. She was the one faithfully, from Jehovah's Witness perspective, kind of the almost like divided household, bringing you kids to the meetings and stuff. You would think that they would be really on her side and supporting her as she saved her whole family from this wicked world.
No. It was very much not what you're doing, it's what you aren't doing.
Yeah. I think that's everything about Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Is they just sit there and pick and pick and pick and try to find what you're not doing and find a way to tear you down.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case.
Did you yourself, did you have any little friends at the Kingdom Hall, or did you feel like, I don't know, were there some older folks who took an interest in you at all and were like nice, or like did you feel like you belonged even at the Kingdom Hall in any way?
Yeah, no, I definitely had like close friends that I'm still friends with now who aren't witnesses anymore. Um, so I definitely had like a group of close friends. And as far as people taking an interest, there were people that took an interest, and it was in the worst way. I mean, there were like some older sisters that like if my mom was in a pinch, we could go to their house. Not everybody was bad, obviously. So I have, fond memories of certain people. But yeah, there wasn't like a ton of people who just wanted to be helpful to be helpful.
Um, how do you feel about the different activities? Did you have to, were you a little did you like public speaking on any level, or did you like going door to door? Was there anything there for you, or did you just hate everything?
I mean, have you ever talked to someone who liked going door to door?
Actually, there are some individuals who at least found some parts of it. I would say even myself, to me, it was like the exploration of neighborhoods and stuff. I found it kind of cool to see where people lived and things, but like the going door to door and talking to people was certainly not my favorite. But
Yeah.
some people felt they were saving people for a time, or, maybe they liked giving talks because they were a little performer at heart, and it was the one chance they got to perform on stage, so to speak, So
I mean,
sometimes people find a little joy in it.
no, I hated going door to door. I hated it. I was basically just like running out the clock until it was done. Like I would do the lightest knock ever, just like cross my fingers that no one came to the door.
Did you even touch the door, or was it the air knock?
Yeah. I mean, no, we had to, make some noise, but it would be very, very slight.
Okay.
And then as far as like giving talks, the only reason why I liked giving talks was because that was the only time that we ever were allowed to like get a treat. It was if we gave a talk.
There you go. Okay. Oh, it's like some people liked going out in field service because there was break. They didn't care about going out in service at all, right? But
Yeah.
you got to go on break, and for 15 glorious minutes at the local McDonald's, you got to have some fries and talk with your friend if they were out or something like that.
Oh, sometimes people that we would go on break with, though, would even like try to make placements wherever we were. Like they wouldn't even just use that time. It's so weird.
Yeah, they're trying to keep their time going so they can keep the numbers up. It's all about the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What a horrible, horrible environment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as we go on into, we could go on into your teenage years, but are there things that happened in your life growing up that you specifically want to talk about? I don't know the timeline for everything in your life. We could go on to your teenage years, or were there any seminal moments, growing up that you, as a kid, that you want to mention? Things that went on?
I mean, from a very, very, very young age in my hall, we all were pulled into backroom meetings by ourselves. I would say, I think the first one I remember being pulled into, I was 8. And it was because I was going in a field service group, and my friend was in another car and they had room. So I like ran from the one car into the other car to go be with my friend. And this sister, a grown sister, went to an elder and said that she was very offended that I didn't want to go in her car group with her.
She was jealous of your little friend.
Why was I being pulled into a backroom meeting when I was 8 about this? And that's one thing that has always like drove me bananas is they would constantly say, you need to talk to the person first. You need to go talk to the person, and then if they don't make the change or whatever, then you talk to the elders. I don't remember a time when that ever happened, ever, not once, not ever. It was constantly getting pulled into a back room by ourselves. And then, yeah, I just feel like you were mentioning, like sometimes when people know that your home life isn't that great, they kind of prey upon that, and that definitely happened in our hall. I can't speak for other members of my family, but I know for myself, I was very objectified at a very young age. Another backroom meeting I was pulled into, I was 13 years old. I think like a lot of girls just developed young. So I didn't look 13. Doesn't matter. I was 13, was pulled into a back room and was told that I was giving older men impure thoughts and that I had to change. This was my fault. I was like, where's this man? Where's this man? Why are we not talking to this man? It was me. It was my fault. And like, that was just, that's one thing my mom has always kind of been very hard on me about. It was, you very much have to look a certain way. Everything I wore was too low cut. And then if I wore a turtleneck, it was too tight. There was just no pleasing. And it was, you're going to get looked at and you're going to, I was always the problem. Just nuts.
Jehovah's Witnesses are very much appearance over substance. And they really, really, really focus on that. And I've certainly had other women who as young girls on the podcast or even in my coaching practice or what have you, it's just this objectification, like you said, at a young age. It doesn't matter if you were 13 or 33 or 63. It's not okay for them to pull you back into comments on your physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly a lot of young girls who develop early or fully or whatever the case are criticized. And I've had stories of it's other sisters who feel jealous or are upset, or it's brothers who are being creeps or whatever. And it's just it's part of something that I don't think is talked about enough in the ex-JW community, and that is the amount of body dysphoria that comes from growing up that way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people, whether it's they were made fun of for their teeth so they can't smile to this day, or their nose or their ears or their hair or their form or what they wore. It was just like constant focus on appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has an impact on people. And it's just not fair for kids to be subjected to that.
No. And then like another instance as well, I think I was 12, was out in service with this one brother who is the biggest, in my viewpoint, pedophile. My mom, it was my mom, him, me, and I think one of my sisters. And my mom and my sister got out to do a door. And I kid you not, the second that car door shut, he turns around to me and asks me if I had gotten my period yet.
Wow.
Like, just the craziest, and that sticks with me, and that's one thing that, and he's still an elder, which is a joy.
Makes you wonder how many other young girls, who knows, he's asked inappropriate questions to.
Mm-hmm. But don't worry, he's still an elder, and he's, never done anything wrong.
I'm sorry. So sorry to hear that that happened to you. Again, just the nature of, I mean, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit. You have young girls or young boys for that matter being taken into back rooms by elders. That's really not a healthy situation. And then you have young kids being left with these people that Jehovah's Witnesses trust implicitly, not knowing who they're leaving their kids with.
Mm-hmm. And when I talked to my mom about it, because I didn't talk to her about it then, it took me like years to talk to her about that. It was, well, what did you do to make him ask you that question? Like, what? And it's funny because like I was mentioning, I've, stayed in touch with some people that I grew up with. And I was talking to someone who was my best friend growing up, and I mentioned that to her because sometimes some of my siblings will make me feel invalidated in things that I think or I say. It's because they don't remember them that way, then it didn't happen. Sure. So with that story, I was talking to her about it, and she's like, I remember that day that happened because I remember you were so upset about it, and you came to me and you talked to me about it. And I was like, that just makes me feel so validated because it was so wrong and it was like so shocking and upsetting at that time. So it was nice to feel validated in that from her.
If you'd like some extra content, if you'd like to learn more about our guests today, maybe even have an opportunity to connect further with them, you can do so by joining the Back Room tier at patreon.com/shunned. I'm certainly glad that you have somebody who was around, I guess, that you felt comfortable telling that to back then. And I mean, certainly, this is the thing about people who pray like this, right? There's not always going to be a quote second witness, as Jehovah's Witnesses need in order to take anything seriously, it sounds like. And I mean, look, if it happened, it happened. Doesn't matter what anybody else says, brothers or sisters say. It's just, yeah, I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses invalidate. And I'm really sorry that your mom couldn't be there for you and that your mom invalidated you and basically victim blamed in a way.
Yeah.
Really nothing you could say that makes that conversation okay.
No. Yeah, I mean, like, again, growing up, basically, she was, raising us as a single mom because my dad was really not around or was not involved. And I think, like, a lot of times she very much just likes to throw her hands up and be like, I can't deal with this. And then just, like, pass. Like, a lot of times that's what she would do. And I wonder if that's why the elders took so many liberties that they did, because they knew that she was just going to give up the reins, basically.
I mean, I think that the elders would try to take the reins anyway when there's no man present, so to speak. And certainly if your mom is going to just matador the situation, walk out of the way, you let the bulls through. That's, Jehovah's Witnesses, the elders are going to barge right through and take the control they need to take.
Yeah.
So
and they did.
Are.
Yeah. Yep.
And by doing so, then she's not really effectively protecting her kids, which is a shame.
No, I never felt protected by her.
So where do we go from here? Do we go into your teenage years? I don't know when you were baptized, if that was anywhere in there. I don't know when your mom and your dad went their separate ways. What kind of, when the various seminal moments happened in your life?
Yeah, so, I didn't get baptized till I was in my 20s.
Okay.
But my parents got divorced when I was 8. And for a long time, it wasn't a scriptural divorce, even though my dad was constantly cheating on my mom with lots of different women, and I'm told that I have half siblings that I don't know. So that'll be fun when that day comes. But it came to the point, like, everyone knew this. This wasn't like he was going out in our small town with these other women. And the brothers would not give her a scriptural divorce, another reason why my family was looked down on. So my oldest sister and her husband actually went and caught him at this other woman's house. Again, wasn't good enough. So my mom had to hire a private detective in order to get a scriptural divorce. We didn't have like any money in general. But she had to go out and hire this private detective to get a scriptural divorce. But even still after that, it was, we just were still tainted.
So for those, because I know not everyone who listens is a former Jehovah's Witness, so they're not always going to understand what that means. So,
okay, sorry.
So I'm just going to quickly describe. So
yeah,
the only valid basis for a quote scriptural divorce would be if someone committed adultery, someone cheated on the other partner. They do allow for separations in cases of severe abuse at times. I mean, that's kind of discouraged too, and usually the woman is blamed if it's abuse being perpetrated on her. But yeah, so if your dad was out there, had already walked out, but they would want proof, like a witness. They need him to say, I cheated, I have had sex, like without a, it's almost like without a what we call them, a certified letter sent through the postal service with a notary stamp on it. If they don't want to believe that he's cheating, then they're not going to. And I don't know why they gave her such a hard time. He wasn't even really a witness. Just kind of crazy that they made her jump through so many hoops to prove, because if you're not scripturally free, you can't remarry. You're stuck.
And then also, when my parents did get divorced, so we lived in this big house that my dad had built in the middle of this field. He refused to leave the house. He refused, honestly, to do anything to make life easier for my mom or for us. I mean, you'd think that he would look at his kids. I mean, if you knew him, you wouldn't think so, but just from an outsider standpoint, you would think a father would want to do what was best for his kids. But again, this is why he didn't come forward with the scriptural divorce. So when we left, we were homeless. So my mom and my two sisters and my one brother lived in a homeless shelter while he stayed in this huge empty house. And when we first moved, they didn't have an opening yet. So there were people from the hall who, like, we kind of divvied up and stayed with different people. But this one family that me and my one sister stayed from, they were the worst family. They are very much like those stereotypical, like, holier than thou, just the worst. Made sure to let us know every single day that we stayed there what an inconvenience it was for them and how much they were going out of their way for us. And to make us, I'm like, we're already going through this horrific, traumatic situation where we have to leave our house. But they made sure literally every single day that we stayed there to make sure that we were aware that this was such a great thing that they were doing, that it was such an inconvenience and an imposition for them. And that was before we moved into the homeless shelter. So, but I almost preferred that.
Oh, I get that. Was it Shayna's episode recently? It's hard to keep everybody straight sometimes.
Yeah.
But somebody recently was talking about a similar situation where they, the elders like took them in at a point or whatever, but were just treated them terribly and like didn't didn't want to feed them and
Yeah.
such, and acted like it was such an imposition. And so, well, what are you doing it for? Like you say, you'll die gladly for your brother or sister because it's this one big happy united family, but you're treating kids like this. It's
Mm-hmm.
terrible.
Yeah, my sister's 4 years older than me, so I was 8 and she was 12. They're telling us this.
What do you get out of shaming a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old?
Yeah, I don't know.
How bad is your life, and how low your self-worth that you have to feel good by making a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old feel bad?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So you all went from that to the homeless shelter?
Mm-hmm. So the shelter was like, it's not what you think of like on a TV homeless shelter where it's like a room with cots in it. It was basically like a little apartment building, but everyone there was not housed. So it was very temporary. Like the woman who lived on the first floor below us was like fleeing an abusive relationship, and so it was like a shelter for her. So there was a couple women, I think, who lived there that were like hiding from their abusive spouses. And that might actually be why we were taken into that house, and I just never realized it until this minute. But it was kind of like a very small temporary apartment.
Does that speak to the potential real danger that you faced in your house? Was your house that bad? That chaotic? I mean, you talk about chaotic. Was it dangerous?
I mean, my dad was very abusive, especially towards the boys more so. I mean, he was abusive towards us as well, but I would say my brothers definitely got more of the brunt physically. He was very, very verbally abusive, which, not saying one is worse than the other. I just think those kind of stick with you a little bit longer, and they're like little bombs that go off every so often in your head.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I would say it was bad. It was bad.
Well, so you all ended up. So the reason that you all ended up leaving the various homes of the various JWs who had taken you in
Mm-hmm.
was to go into that particular shelter, then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So where does life go once you move into that?
So again, it was temporary. I honestly think we were only there for like a month, and then we moved into this like low income apartment in this very trashy town. Because that's what we could afford, honestly. And then it was like a different school district, so we had to switch schools. And well, I did because I was in elementary school. The other kids, they were still in the same school district, so they still went to the same high school. But yeah, that was interesting, starting school at a new school in the middle of the year as well.
Yeah, actually. So how would you have been, or what grade would you have been in when you had to do that?
I think I was in 5th grade, 4th or 5th grade.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Tough. I think I did it in 2nd. I remember having to go to a new school and walk in the middle of the year and like be introduced to the kids and stuff. Oh, I was dead man walking.
Well, it's also like you already feel awkward enough doing that. And then it's like, by the way, can't celebrate your birthday or Christmas.
Yeah, let's make you as awkward as humanly possible.
Exactly. Yep.
Give you zero chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, so you moved to the new school. You all have moved, I guess, to a new place now, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Life is starting anew, somewhat. I guess dad is now out of the picture, and you all are living elsewhere, or is he still in it?
So it's funny because literally after my parents got divorced is when my dad tried to start to make an effort to see me and my siblings. I don't know why. So he tried for a little bit, and I think because I was the youngest, I am the one who kind of went for it the most, because here he is, like, essentially trying to bribe us, like taking us to restaurants or like letting us pick a choice. Like, he never did that ever when we were growing up. But that didn't last very long at all.
Many potentialities there. I mean, whether it could have been manipulation to try to change the tenor of things, or whether it was just genuine guilt over situations, and remorse for a time, and he just couldn't keep things up because of his own struggles. I don't know. Could have been many different things.
Well, he also was real quick to introduce us to his girlfriend that he had been seeing the whole time my mom and him were married.
Oh, he had a girlfriend the whole time.
Well, for many years, yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly the time frame, but for a very long time,
yeah. Don't know what he was doing. I can speculate many different things. But
yeah, I don't know what he's ever
certainly confusing for children, and not something that you all should be subjected to in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been handled in many different ways if adults want to go their separate ways
Mm-hmm.
without further traumatizing the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why he ever did any of the stuff that he's done.
So where did you go from there?
So we lived in that house for, I don't know, like a year or two, and then we moved again to this other, like, nice, it was small, but it was like a nice little house. I feel like I remember having the most fun while we lived there. I think by that time when we moved there, I was probably 11. And we lived there till I was probably 14 or 15. And I don't know, like, my mom kind of went off the rails for her a little bit during that time, where, like, she started dating our landlord. Like, so she kind of went off the rails a little bit and, like, let us, gave us some freedom a little bit for a very short period of time. And then it was no. But, like, she would have us make Kahlua for her when we were kids, like, just random stuff. But yeah, we always had people over. I feel like we always, like, our house was kind of like that house was, where our friends were just always there. Like, my brother's best friend was always there. And, like, it was just, I don't know, my friends were always there. It was just like a rotating door, basically.
So at least was more of a social home, it sounds like, and you had some friends around.
Yeah, definitely.
Mom was, well, she was kind of letting her hair down a little bit, it sounds like,
bit, yeah.
in some new ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just kind of a different vibe, a different environment for a while.
It was, yeah, it was.
And things changed.
Yeah, it definitely was a different vibe. It was a very easy house to sneak in and out of. Okay. So that happened a lot. I definitely got into a lot of trouble when we lived there, but the best kind of trouble. But yeah, like, I have good memories of that house. I mean, not all good memories, but there were some good memories there.
You're just, like, sneaking out, meeting friends and stuff?
Friends, boyfriends.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. And Mom at this point is preoccupied and just
well, the one time that she did, like, I became very defiant. And so I was just like, I'm dating this guy that I went to high school with. I was like, I really like him and I'm leaving. So I went out on a date with him and she called the police. And then called his parents and said that she was going to have him arrested, even though she couldn't. She just, I don't know. I don't know how to sum her up. She's a tough one to sum up.
Well, there's a lot of control there, it sounds
Yes.
like. And
Mm-hmm.
you weren't doing the things she wanted you to do, so she forced that control.
Mm-hmm.
Used what she could to reel you back in.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Yep.
So I guess this is why we have to sneak out and such if we're going to have a life, because there's not one to be had otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, yes. There was things that we were allowed to do, obviously. Like, she would always want to have people over to do, like, the Watchtower study. And obviously no one wants to do that.
Yeah. I meant if we're going to have a life outside of those kinds of things.
Oh, right.
We're going to have to sneak out, right? Because
yes.
otherwise it sounds like the only kind of life she wanted you all to have was this Watchtower cult-driven life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. If you wanted something that was not in line with the quote, like the theocratic arrangements or whatever, then she was not okay with that.
Yes, we had to sneak.
Yeah. I mean, kids usually sneak because they have to.
Right. Yeah, I got very good at that. Yeah.
I mean, it's like people try to escape prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where there's a will, there's a way, so to speak. But when you're that desperate, you do what you have to do, which sometimes shows the desperation. So, sounds like the environment's still very extremely JW centric, hasn't really changed much.
Yes. It was like when she kind of, as you said, let her hair down, it was like a very short period of time. I would say like 6 months tops. At that point, I think my brother had moved out. He wasn't doing anything with being a witness. And she would like talk to him. Like, she had shunned him. But then when this period of time happened, it was okay. And she like would have him and his friends come over and like ask them for advice, I think, because they would tell her what she wanted to hear.
So she was trying to get advice from outsiders as she was going outside a little bit.
Yes.
She roped your brother back in for that, and then after 6 months, was she done with him?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, like, she would talk to him here and there, but not like that. Like,
back to shunning primarily.
Yeah. And it like hurts my heart so much to even think about it, because you could just tell that he was like soaking that up.
Oh yeah.
Like when my mom was like pulling him back in, asking him for advice, like wanting to be involved with his friends, and then again was just like, be.
Well, yeah, it's the lack of love that Jehovah's Witnesses have, and the way they pull people in and out at their convenience, and let's face it, usually when they want something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, I went back to hardcore JW.
So what do you do? So obviously you're kind of trying to flex your muscles a little bit. You're trying to have some sort of life of your own. Again, as I always say, the double life, they would always say you're living a double life. You've got this outside life from Jehovah's Witnesses, but that double life, that second life, is actually your primary life. That's the one you're trying to live, that you want.
Exactly.
The double life is the one you're being handed, and they're trying to force you into a particular mold. So how do things go as you're trying to become an individual, which is normal for any teenager, and still being held down?
Well, I became very rebellious. I got a job at a gym. in a tanning salon of the gym. Started making like lots of friends there. Got involved with two men, not at the same time, I was 16, one was 28. And oddly, and I didn't even know this, he was studying. And like one day after work, I was in his car with him, and I noticed there was a songbook on his seat. And I was like, what is this? Well, it turns out he had two kids as well. His ex-wife wouldn't let him see his kids if he wasn't studying. So anyway, then this other guy I was seeing was actually someone that I worked with, brother. He was 26, and he started to groom me and then sexually assaulted me. So that was something that just added into this amalgam of trauma. But yeah, I just started to just rebel and act out.
Well, did anyone know that you were dating people so much older or anything?
I mean,
did your mom know at all about these relationships, or did anybody know?
My friends knew, because we all were kind of like sneaking around, and we were each other's like accomplices. And of course, when you're younger, you think, and he was the one guy that was my friend's brother. He was a tattoo artist, and so I was like, thought he was so dangerous and just ridiculous. And so they kind of thought that too. But my mom, the other guy, the one that was 28 that I worked with, him and I were on the phone one night, and my mom, it was like when we had house phones, and my mom picked up the line and started listening into our call. And I don't know how she knew who he was, but she, again, and I wish that she had followed through on this, honestly, told him that she was going to call the police. And I wish she had of, because he's a predator. And he had a young daughter. I think his daughter at that time was like 2. And they also had a son, I think that was like 4. And he was just so scared about like losing his kids, which he should have been. I mean, I was a child. I was 16. So she knew about that. But after that happened, there wasn't like a conversation to talk about like what happened, or to try to be supportive, because I was the victim in that situation. It was, I can't believe you did this.
Yeah, she threatened him, but where's the point where she's sitting her daughter down and having a real conversation about, sweetie, these are the things you need to look out for. These, this is what people are doing, teaching you to love yourself, and what is and is not appropriate, and just really helping you to not cope, but to just be yourself in a healthy way. Where are the healthy teachings? Where is she sitting you down and teaching you a better way? Instead, it's just either blame or shame or threats. But there's no, where's the positive love in the relationship where she's really helping her kid? It's more combative than anything. It's just pushing you away more than drawing you close in a way that's healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and again, this is, I know I had mentioned like before, where she would just kind of like to throw her hands up and let us be basically like the elders issue or the elders problems. And that's kind of what she did, was like, well, you need to talk to the elders about this. And not she never dealt with it. And honestly, when I talked to them and I talked about like the age difference, none of them even blinked an eye or reported it or did anything. It was just like the normal, very inappropriate questions that I was asked by myself when I was 16 in a room full of men.
Oh, okay. So, um, inappropriate sexual questions
Yes.
that were being asked of you, which again, let's say is sexually abusive on its own because they have no right to that information. And you have this imbalance of power with multiple men sitting in a room asking women or young ladies, girls, whatever, questions about things that are inappropriate. And it's it itself is abusive. Uh, that whole arrangement.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry that you didn't have anybody there who could have actually been helpful or given you the right type of attention in a way to be helpful. Instead, it sounds like everybody was just using you for their own agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe to an extent, for sure. But
Because they don't have anything to offer that's better.
yeah, that's for sure. But yes, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I ask, did you get any? You said that there were two guys,
Mm-hmm.
and that one did lead to assault.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get any help for that back then? Did anybody know? Was there medical attention?
So
Was there anything?
I the next day went to Planned Parenthood by myself and got Plan B. I'm glad that I was smart enough to know that. And then I ended up telling my brother, my one brother that I'm close with, not my oldest brother. Normally, if you hear me talk about my brother, I'm talking about him.
Okay.
Because we were very close. I ended up telling him about it. I don't remember, but I said it in like a very nonchalant way because, of course, I felt like it was my fault because that's kind of how I was made to feel.
Yeah, everything is yours, your fault from the beginning. So yeah.
So I brought it up to him, and actually, this is like a roundabout story, but his best friend, he wasn't in the truth, or I hate that phrase, he wasn't a witness. His best friend actually ended up marrying my sister. It's my niece's dad. Roundabout story. But at the time, his best friend wasn't a great person, my niece's dad. He recently passed away of an overdose. Another story. But my brother told him, and actually this was a story that I was going to tell at his funeral, but I didn't get a chance to stand up because it was like my favorite story about him. He had gone to high school with this guy, and they went and waited for him outside of the tattoo shop and beat the shit out of him. Just like beat the shit out of him. And my brother was like, if I ever see you anywhere near my sister, because at that point I worked like right around the corner from where he worked, he's like, I'll come back and I'll do it again. But that was like my favorite. Not saying to resort to violence, but
no, but
yeah, that was like my favorite.
I would imagine if nothing else, good Lord, didn't it feel good on some level to have someone validate and believe you and act in line with protecting you in some way when no one else has?
Yeah. And my brother was like always very protective of us, like would always take the brunt from my dad to protect us, honestly. Just like the best brother that you could ask for.
I'm sorry he had to be a brother at that level. What a terrible thing for him to have to do or to feel the need to do. And What an unfair situation.
And he, if you knew him at all, he is like the gentlest, kindest, non-confrontational, like, was completely out of character. And so for that to happen, you know that he was like through the roof.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, wow, what a story. And I guess, but you never got that. You never got. No one stepped in. Hey, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
No one asking you how you're doing. No one sitting down with you and making sure that you're doing all right.
Well, I think it's very common. I mean, it was in our hall to discourage any type of outside therapy.
Oh, yeah.
So they would just encourage you to go talk to an elder. I'm like, I don't really want to get advice from someone who does lawn care. I don't know, like, what right you have to think that you can
Sure.
give me any type of therapeutic advice. You know, like, it just makes no sense.
Well, all they have to give you is biblical advice from their distorted narrative. And that's really all they can offer. I mean, honestly, you'd already experienced going to the elders just made things worse.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no. It's just a shame that there's no parental person around you, school counselor, somebody who you could have talked to as a safe adult, and in these situations, there was no soft landing place, and that's a shame.
So at that point, I don't think I mentioned it. I had started doing homeschooling.
Oh,
So my mom has heart disease and has had 3 heart attacks. So when I was 16, early 16, she had a heart attack. And so I started homeschooling so that I could work full time to start to like help pay bills.
okay. So you have, oh boy. So that was just like survival. So for survival at 16, wait, at 16 is when you're also going through these other things we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So
A lot happened when I was 16. Yeah.
yeah, this 16-year-old has a lot on her plate. 16-year-old Kelsi is going through these unhealthy relationships with men, and horrible things are happening there, and you're also having, I don't know, did you feel the need to leave school to work, or were you asked to? Like, did you know that there were financial issues, or did you just jump into action, or how'd that come about? I mean, that's, good Lord, that's a lot.
It was necessity because my mom wasn't able to work for a while. And again, this is one of those things where, like, if you talk to one of my sisters, because she remembers things differently, it didn't happen like this. But I got a full-time job, and her and I used to be the ones that would go to the grocery store, and we would pay for the groceries with our money from our checks. I was like, how do you not remember this? Like, I don't know. But yeah, it was necessity.
Wow. A lot on a 16-year-old kid's plate. An awful lot. I don't know if you see many 16-year-olds lately, but
Yeah.
as you get older and you see a 16-year-old, you realize, wow, man, I was 16, just a kid going through all this stuff. It's a lot. So you stepped up.
Yeah.
If you're feeling stuck in your life after cult involvement and can't find the life you want, leaving a cult is a new beginning on a path to healing, not some magical end itself that is healing. Relief from the immediate pain feels good at first, but that's not necessarily true happiness. The feelings of social awkwardness and isolation, lack of self worth, perfectionism, patterns of being attracted to emotionally unavailable people, not even knowing who you are yourself. All of these things and more are lingering effects of that environment. Being in a cult isn't just following a doctrine, but it's following a culture, a way of life, a way of being that doesn't just go away because you stopped attending meetings. If you want to shortcut the path to healing instead of trying to figure it out on your own, maybe even work with me professionally in my cult recovery coaching practice, you can find opportunities to do that and also for other cool resources at my website, exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com.
Yep, you got to do what you got to do. But I'm sure you hear this too from a lot of people. I feel like when you're raised a witness, you do tend to just like mature faster because there's not like a lot of room for childlike things when you're just constantly hearing about the end of the world and seeing pictures of what it's going to look like and talking about these awful scenarios that are going to happen. So I think, and also like you're responsible for making a huge life decision a lot of times when you're a child. So I think we do tend to mature faster. So I was a very mature 16-year-old, I would say.
I'm sure you were, and certainly you're right. They put kids in adult situations a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Treat kids like adults. You're not really supposed to play. Play is frowned upon. You should be reading a magazine. Don't you understand that the world's coming to an end?
Mm-hmm.
Blah, blah, blah. But that also comes with its own stifling for a lot of people. And there's a lot of stunted, very immature Jehovah's Witnesses who have lived in this fairy tale world that their mom and dad have built up for them. And they don't, but because you had to go through some stuff, you had seen it, you had been through some things, and because you were a doer, you stepped up and did what needed to be done. So good for you for taking a stand and for pitching in where you could. There's a lot of people who would not do that. That's, I think, speaks to you a bit.
Oh, thank you.
That's a good thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wish you didn't have to at 16, but you do what you got to do to get by, right?
Yeah. You just do it. I think you just put your head down and you do what you got to do.
Yeah. So you're now homeschooled. How's that go for you? Did you homeschool, or were you like a lot of witness homeschoolers who really didn't do any school?
Yeah, it was more like that because it was that JW one, the Pear Blossom School.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that one. I'm not intimately familiar with that one, but
it was like where you could use service towards curriculum. Like that counted somehow.
That's so, yeah. I mean, what, going to the meeting is like your history lesson?
Yes, like legit. Mm-hmm.
Was Pear Blossom accredited? Did you actually get a real diploma at the end of that?
Yeah, it is accredited.
Is it?
Yep. You can Google it. It's Pear Blossom Private School.
Okay,
because
I know
called.
There's some that are not accredited, but this one is.
It is, yeah.
Okay. It's sad because all kids should have a right to an education, and Jehovah's Witnesses devalue it and take away that right, and it's a shame.
I mean, like I had mentioned before, I was never like a really great student in general. I think now that I think about it, I just don't learn well in like traditional settings. I'm much more of like I learn through doing than just like sitting and having someone talk at me. So I think that when I had gone to school, if they had alternative schools like they have now, I would have been like a superstar student, but I just didn't learn well in a traditional way. I think that I've learned through experiences, so I think I have like a lot of street smarts for sure. But yeah, I just didn't learn well in a traditional setting.
Well, kids also learn better when they have a safe home
Yeah.
and when they're not in a cult.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Facts.
it would. I don't know that you ever had a chance
Yeah.
to experience school for what it could have been either. How can we really know how you could learn when you're embroiled in the middle of all of this drama? Like, who cares? What school matter when home sucks and when you're not happy and your every day is a battle for survival? School, whatever. That's the thing you go to. I mean, never got a chance for most.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are big facts right there. Yeah.
oh yeah, environment matters, but also we do learn differently too. You know,
Mhm.
you throw a book in front of me, I'll try to read it, but my ADHD brain's going to struggle. But give me an audio book, and I can absorb all of the information and remember it and
Yep.
apply it. I just can't with the written word as well. So it is what it is. We're all different. That's okay. Um, but I'm sorry that you were kind of denied certain opportunities there because Pear Blossom is not.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
You can say it.
Um, so so where do you go as the 16-year-old now? You're homeschooled too. Where's your life take you?
So again, I was working full time. I lived in this really small town in New England. Like me and my best friend, well, we all would kind of get in a lot of trouble. Like there really was not a lot to do. Like the biggest thing that people would do would be like hang out in the parking lot of the McDonald's or the parking lot of the Walmart, which is, so we definitely got into a lot of trouble. We we went skinny dipping a lot. We'd bring different people down to do that. We were always like driving somewhere. We never, like, if we could, we wouldn't really stay where we were. We would drive to like other towns in Massachusetts, or like we'd kind of bop all around. But yeah, we definitely were. I mean, I would honestly say I don't think I ever was fully in it or ever fully invested. I just kind of went through the motions because I knew that when I didn't, I was going to lose my family and, basically everyone that I'd grown up with. But yeah, we definitely were not acting like good little JW girls. That's for sure.
Okay, so when you're talking about meeting in the McDonald's parking lot, the Walmart parking lot, and going skinny dipping, you're talking about with the witness kids, not like you had other friends that you were doing this with.
Well, the McDonald's and the Walmart was just like my town thing, like just people in my town. As far as like when we'd go skinny dipping, there was always people there in general. It was just like this very popular spot. So you just kind of go with whoever was there, but we definitely brought our JW friends there.
Oh,
as
wow.
Well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a mixed bag, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you all were just doing the normal things there.
Yes. And then, like we'd smoke like a cigarette. I mean, I only ever in my whole life smoked, I think, 2 cigarettes. Thank God. But like, we just do stupid things that you do when you're young.
Sure. Normal, stupid things.
Yeah, exactly.
And so as you all were going out and doing this stuff, did people get caught at any points or?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, we would go to the Jersey Shore every summer. And sometimes we were allowed to bring a friend with us. So I brought my best friend one year. It was like the first year that I ever was able to bring someone. And it was like an 8-hour drive from where we lived in New England. And all of a sudden we came back from the beach and her dad was there. in the driveway. And we were like, oh my God, what happened? Like, I guess her grandmother hadn't been, like, had some health issues, and so she thought, like, her grandmother died. Well, come to find out, her mom went through her room and found her diary, and, like, it detailed everything that we had been doing. And he drove and picked her up. Yeah.
That's the problem with being a JW kid, is if you start doing stuff with other people and going to have fun, if there's one weak link, there's one person who's writing this down or taking pictures or something, and you've got those parents who are going through people's kids' rooms looking for contraband or whatever. They find it, you're all cooked.
And he, at the time, was an elder in the hall. And then he had to step down because of all this stuff that we were involved in, which is so dumb, but whatever.
He wasn't controlling you all the way he was supposed to.
Exactly. So he had to step down because I think what she ended up telling me was they told him that he had to get a handle on his family.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wasn't controlling his family the way he's supposed to.
Yeah, so we definitely got caught. But we had a lot of fun when we were younger.
So there were some good memories back then, it sounds like.
There was, yeah. And she's someone that I'm close with now. And yeah, we talk about just this, and we are both like, because it was before social media. So we are both like, we are so thankful that we grew up in this time before social media, because none of it is documented anywhere.
Yes. So where do you go from there? I mean, like, did you graduate at 18? Did you have plans or anything you were hoping to do? Where does life take you as because you're starting getting close here into adulthood?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So when I was 18, my oldest sister had 2 kids. She was married. She's a witness, still is a witness, and her husband is an elder now, I think. But she had 2 kids, and she worked at a daycare center, basically so that she could watch her daughter while she was working. And like randomly one day out of the blue, she called me and was like, we need somebody at the daycare. I know. And I was like, had just quit a job, or I don't remember exactly, but she was like, we need somebody. I know you need a job. Would you be able to come work here? I was like, okay. So I went and I worked at this daycare center. I think I was 17 actually when I started there. And then I worked there till I was 18 and a half. And I really liked it. Now I think about it, and I don't know how on earth I ever did that. But it was nice to like be able to spend time with my niece and nephew, and my sister worked there. And then I remember just one day I was driving home from work, and in New England in general, they love roundabouts. They just will put a roundabout anywhere. So I was driving through this roundabout, and I remember all of a sudden I just felt like I was drowning. And I was like, I have to move. I can't stay here. And then literally probably within 3 months, I moved to Rhode Island. Just got out. Yeah, it was just like, I never really liked living in this small town. I obviously didn't like the hall. Just the only reason that I kind of stayed was because it was just my mom and I at that time. And she would always make me feel guilty whenever I would talk about wanting to move because I was leaving her alone. Yeah, and it was just like one day I literally was driving around this roundabout. I'll never forget it. And it literally felt like I couldn't breathe. And I was like, I gotta go. I can't stay here. And then I moved.
So what were you doing? So in order to move, you have to have money. You have to have something to do.
Hmm.
Was this as kind of an impulsive thing, or did you have things all lined up?
So obviously, like I had met people. I actually had dated someone that lived there. So I'd spent a lot of time and I really liked it. And my sister had gotten married to someone and from Boston, and they ended up living in Rhode Island because it was like in the middle. So I had her there. I had friends there that I had made through my ex at that time, and then one of the friends that I had made wanted to move out as well and needed a roommate. And so since she lived there, she could go like look at apartments. So she found an apartment and I was working. And then I found a job at another daycare actually in Rhode Island. And just it ended up working out and I moved.
So that's a pretty big transition, moving, I guess, away from your mom, like very far. I don't know how far you're moving.
It was like 2.5 hours.
Ah, nice buffer.
Yeah. But
So,
the craziest thing to me is that when I did move, I actually went to a Kingdom Hall. Like I still went, even though it was just like muscle memory. You know what I mean? Like it
what you
wasn't.
do? It's what you do.
Yeah, it was just like that's how you make friends and that's how you meet people and this is just what you do. And then if your family comes to visit you, you can't be like, oh, I've never gone to the hall before. You know, so it's just like something that you did.
When you were talking before about the friends you had made and different things there, were you talking about witnesses?
Yes.
Wow, okay. So you had some inroads there, I guess. So I guess it makes sense to go. Again, it's where the community happens, right? I mean, even if you're just there for some of the community or for friends or whatever, it's where your friends are. So you're more likely to attend. It's, I mean, you through the lens of addiction, it's just the thing that you do. It rules people's lives when they come from that environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, me and my roommate, we definitely like she was like similar to me where like she was in but she was out. So like I had like a fake ID and we would go out all the time and like she was over 21, so she would always buy alcohol for the house. We'd have like random people over all the time. By like we'd go out. But then it wasn't too long after I moved that I met my now husband. I met him when I was young at a witness party. So
Okay. And so it was that changed the trajectory of things, or you all got together and did you have a good, I don't know, witness dating is weird, but like did you have a healthy courtship?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't date like a witness.
Okay.
I dated like an 18-year-old. Yeah, I mean, for appearance wise, like with certain people, we would try to keep it up, but we were alone together all the time. Like, I don't know.
Like normal people.
Yes. Yeah.
So then you guys start dating. How does your life change?
So we started dating, and he ended up moving. He's from New England, also raised a witness. His whole family is still witnesses. His mom passed away a couple years ago from MS. She never really was in it, but her dad, like when she started getting sick, his dad would just bring her to the meetings. And her mind kind of became like very childlike, and they would, have her comment like a child. And but anyway, but she never really believed it. She never was in it. She never was baptized, but like she just went along with it kind of as her mind started to deteriorate. But his whole family is still in. He's not, obviously. So he moved. I actually moved in with him like a month or two before we got married, but didn't tell anyone about that. And then, yeah, we got married. We eloped at a judge's office one afternoon, and that was it.
I have to ask. I mean, you're talking about an elopement. So how long did you guys date?
We dated, I think, a year and a half.
Okay, so you kept that. You kept that. I mean, I don't know. Did everybody know that you were dating? They just didn't know that you were living together.
Yes, yeah. They knew we were dating.
Okay.
And like I always say, my whole family, they love Jay, my husband, more than they love me because they just like immediately took him in, and he's just like a very likable person. Sorry, there's an ambulance.
Oh, it's all right.
But they just took him in immediately, loved him. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm glad that it sounds like that part was at least a smooth transition.
Yeah.
They liked him, so
Yeah.
that was good. So you get married, you elope, so you didn't tell anybody. Obviously, at some point, I guess people figured this out, or how did they eventually find out?
Well, so we called our parents on the way to the judge's office.
Ah, okay.
And they actually were both like very relieved. I think for a couple reasons, my mom was just because I think if I had a wedding, I'd still be paying it off probably just because I think that I would have just gone over the top, which would have been ridiculous in hindsight. And I'm so happy that we did it the way that we did. Mm-hmm. And then I think his dad was relieved because I think he knew that we were, involved with each other.
Okay. So at least if we make this not just legal, but right in front of Jehovah. So
exactly. Yeah.
Because that's what matters most. Then okay, cool. So they were okay with you all eloping and not necessarily being present.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then shortly after we got married, within the first year, he ended up like feeling guilty and went to the elders, and he got disfellowshipped.
Oh, because he talked to them about pre-marriage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. That's brutal. I understand why. That guilty conscience. I mean, they do such a great job of shaming people, making you feel bad for harboring things. It's a shame that people have to.
So when we were together, we were in this hall, and this hall is very much like a series of families or like people whose families had all gone to this hall. So they're all very much like intertwined. So like when you come in as a new person, you're kind of like, they keep you at a distance for sure. Mm-hmm. So we just like never really felt included. Like they would have like cookouts and parties, and they'd all be talking about it and in front of us, and we weren't invited. But it was just very strange because I remember when he was meeting with the brothers, this one brother who we call Mr. Burns because he looked exactly like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. He was the worst. And he came up to Jay in the middle of the hall. And I mean, like, this was before he had met with them, and asks him, while we're surrounded by people, this question: was there penetration?
Oh my gosh.
Yes. It was insanity. I just don't understand. Like, that's nobody's business in general, but like to ask that in a room full of people, he didn't pull him aside. He didn't say it quietly. He literally walked right up to him while we were like in a row surrounded by people. Yeah.
That is insane.
Yep. Yeah.
That aside, Jay got disfellowshipped.
Hmm.
You were both involved in what? So did you end up getting in trouble too?
Well, I wasn't baptized at that point.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't
that's right. You said
baptized.
it later.
I think like I got my privileges removed or
I was saying,
something.
did he have like a marking talk or something?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Probably. I don't remember because it was just like that he had got his fellowship. So that
Did
was
you
such
get
a
dragged back into meetings too again to recount things in front of
yes.
people?
Yep.
Wow. Which really doesn't even need to happen because he's confessing to stuff anyway. So if
Yep.
you're not baptized, nothing can happen to you. Why do they even need your side of anything?
Yeah, and they I think met with Jay like 3 times, and they met with me like twice to talk about everything in detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry again that happens. So he gets this fellowship. That must have really changed things. Or well, I don't know. How did that change things for you guys? Because I mean, that's a pretty big deal in JW land.
It was. So again, it was within the first year of us being married. So it was very like we were very isolated. Obviously, like my family, his family, our friends. So it was just him and I. So that was like a learning experience, because it's a new marriage. You're just living together and getting to know each other, and then it's like boom, it's just the two of you.
And so you got shunned too, even though you weren't baptized, or
I mean, well, my family like wouldn't come to visit or anything. I'd still see like my one sister lived there, so I'd still see her. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it was like obviously people knew
yeah.
why he got DF'd, and they were like, well, if she was baptized, she would have got DF'd too. So they basically,
So therefore, yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Wow.
yeah.
So what was it like to be shunned?
I'm. I mean, it's like it is now. It's not great. I think it's a little worse now because my nieces and nephews are involved. But it's not great. Not a good feeling, especially when you're like you feel like it's almost like when you're from the outside looking in, you feel like you're the crazy one because you're like, how come I ever thought like this, or how come you can't see that you're the problem? It's not me. It's not everybody else. It's you.
A great moment in healing happens when you get to the point where you realize it's not you, it's them. And instead of worrying about them being disappointed in you, you start realizing that you're disappointed in them.
Yeah.
And that script is flipped because it's yeah, they will make you, I mean, narcissists will always make the people around them feel like you're the crazy one. You're the one doing something weird. But it's when that is flipped and you realize, no, I'm not the one here that's outside the lines. It's entirely you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed at you and the way that you behave, Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm far more mature than any of you. I've grown. I'm doing things. I'm moving on with life in healthy ways. And
Mm-hmm.
you all are the ones stuck and small. You're the ones being abusive. It does start to change things a bit. But yeah, it's a very tough thing to work through.
Mm-hmm.
Very,
Yeah.
very tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess then where'd you go from there? Was Jay working hard diligently to get back, or
Yes. So he was reinstated, I think, within a year. I don't know the exact time frame. It might have been less than a year, but it was within a year. Yeah. So he was trying, like going to all the meetings and studying and, trying to do everything to get back in.
And so when he gets, what was it like when he got back in? My original podcast, This JW Life, is my story, which started all of this. You can listen to it today on podcast apps and find more at thisjwlife.com. Or if you're interested, you can read my book, Becoming Jehovah, online for free at becomingjehovah.com.
I mean, it was good. I mean, like our family started talking to us again and just like hanging back out with friends. I mean, some people still, even after you get reinstated or whatever, will keep you at an arm's length. And like, so we weren't invited immediately to as many things as we had been in the past. And some people, were like a little skittish. But I mean, it was good.
So I guess his reinstatement was kind of by default your reinstatement, though I understand technically you weren't disfellowshipped.
It kind of was, yes. But again, like I mentioned, I never really fully was in it. And I think a lot of people knew that. I got very good about knowing what things to say to certain people to make them think that you are more involved than you are. So I think a lot of people like loved Jay, wanted to spend time with Jay, like thought that he was much more invested because he was, but they still weren't so crazy about me.
Oh, so again, it's the Jay show. You're kind of living in it a little bit. He's being, like you said, he was kind of like adopted by your family in a certain way. And now here we are at the Kingdom Hall, and people are looking at him a little differently than you. That's awful.
I mean, it is what it is.
Well, it is, but I'm sure it didn't feel good. I was going to tease you and say, well, you had Jay meet me earlier on the call.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe he should be sitting in a chair, not you.
He's right in the other room. I can pull him on in here. It can be a double. Get a two.
That's just the JW way. That the way they parse people or they pick and choose people and stuff, and it's horrible. You're awesome too. Why can't you be a part of things? But again, they could kind of tell that you weren't as into it as much as he was, I guess, or.
And it's so crazy because
and again, you weren't baptized, so that's gonna be a stain too.
That I wasn't, yeah. I remember that a brother saying to Jay, I had been again raised as a witness. I wasn't baptized. I think I was an unbaptized publisher. And when we were dating, one of the elders in his hall telling him that I was an unbeliever, and he was like, "She's not an unbeliever. Like, what are you talking about?" Like, just the mindset is bananas.
You weren't a full member.
But when I finally did decide, like, I was done, and I remember we were walking in our neighborhood, because this was a couple of years ago, and he just started telling me that he never believed it. It was like, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I had no idea that he ever felt like that. Because I always just thought it was me, because he was the one who was always like, we should go out in service. We got to make sure we get up for the meeting. He would study. Like, he would never try to make me study, but he would study. Like, he was doing all the things. So when he told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I couldn't believe it. But again, it's the same reason where, when you say it out loud or you admit it to yourself, everything that you're going to be losing.
Big moments.
Yeah.
Sounds like there was another big moment in between that where you actually got baptized.
Yeah, so I got baptized in my 20s. and I didn't want to. The only reason that I got baptized was because my mom was constantly asking me and pressuring me to get baptized, constant, every single time I would talk to her. One thing that we always say in my family about my mom is that she is like the biggest guilt tripper of all time. Like,
travel agent for guilt trips.
Exactly. She could run the agency.
Yep.
How
Jehovah's Witnesses do.
And she, like, every conversation that I'd have with her, I'd talk to her on the phone, and she would, like, purposely call me on, like, Sundays in the afternoon and be like, so, what did you do today? Like, you know, just, like, very passive-aggressive, very guilty. But she just constantly was like, so, you're going to get baptized. When are you getting baptized? Have you gone over the questions? Have you, you know, like, constant. So it was just finally, I was just like, well, I guess I'll get baptized.
And what was that like? Knowing that it wasn't something that you were super into, I mean, did you just kind of dissociate internally and just do the thing that you had to do to survive, so to speak? Just take that step, do it, or did you hate it? Or, I don't know, for a minute, did you feel zealous in some way?
No, I hated it. Number one, it's not great. Like, you get ready for a day, and then in the middle of your day, you're getting dunked in a pool in front of, 1,500 people. That's not great. And then the one thing that I do remember about that day is that was the only time that I ever remember in my entire life my mom saying that she was proud of me, ever. And it was like she was acting like such like a stereotypical, like, loving, proud mom. And that was it. It ended that day. It started that day. And that's done. That's done now.
It's I often refer to it as, it's almost like the JW version of a birthday. Like, you never get nothing is ever about you, and you're not to be celebrated. But the one thing you can do, one time in your life, is go get dunked in a pool of water, and then you don't even get 15 minutes of fame. For 5 minutes, for 15 seconds, whatever it is, you get this fleeting moment of like, people are proud of me. It's like the only thing you can really do that makes, especially if you're a sister, there's really limited things that you can do. You get dunked, and then, yes, mom or dad is proud of you. Possibly.
Yeah, exactly. For like 15 minutes, and then it's meh. Yeah. Then it's, why aren't you pioneering?
It's never enough.
Exactly.
Never enough.
Never.
No what you do.
No.
You never have their love. You can never have Jehovah's love, so to speak. Like, it's always more. What have you done for me lately, and what are you going to do for me next?
Right, like just conditional.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, keep you, again, the proverbial carrot dangling in front of you that you can never reach. No matter what you do, you can chase it, but they don't actually even have that carrot to give. So it's all for naught.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I know we've talked a lot about my mom, but like, she just, and I think I mentioned this in the email that I had sent you, like, and again, going back to how witnesses pick and choose things. So my oldest brother was never baptized, again, moved out when I was 4. Just never like bought into it. He very much does things for shock value. Like when he moved out, he moved to New York City, and started to like get in with skinheads. I don't know how much of those things he believed, but he would like wear swastikas to kind of like for the shock value of it.
One cult to another.
So he, in that time, he ended up getting arrested for attempted murder because he waited outside his ex-girlfriend's house and beat her current boyfriend up to the point where he almost died. Then he fled the law for a couple of years and changed his name and like lived under an assumed name. But then he finally like gave himself up, and he ended up having to serve like 8 years, and his prison sentence originally was only supposed to be like a year or two, but because he had fled the law, they added onto his sentence. But anyway, because he had done at that point was living in California, but because he had committed the crime in New York, they extradited him to Rikers. My mom would go all the time and visit him in Rikers. Like, would spend much more time with him than with me, who was going to meetings at the time. Like, it was just...
Well, but she already had you. You got baptized. He could still be saved.
Yeah, and I don't even know, like, what their conversations were, but she would, like, send him money, like, put money in his commissary.
Goodness.
Like, she's remarried, and her husband would go with her, and, like, I don't know if he ever gave them, like, any type of hope that he might study or something. Knowing what he's like as a person, I don't foresee that he would have said that, but they might have thought that this is what's going to turn.
Jehovah's Witnesses, hope springs eternal. I mean, I think for even most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, even if you've been out 20, 30 years, somewhere out there is a parent who is just sitting there saying, now they know it's the truth. They'll come back. Like they just believe this. They can't believe. They're so full of their own belief that they can't believe that other people don't feel the same.
But to me, it's so crazy to think that like this little thing of you getting dunked at a pool at a convention center is this defining you're good and you're bad. Because like my other brother, the one who I was very close with growing up, was baptized. He has a substance abuse issue. And my mom just like, nothing to do with him. I'm like, so what's your one son who's in jail for almost murdering someone? That's okay, because he wasn't baptized. This is just fine. My other son, obviously struggling. I mean, he's had a lot of other things, but I don't want to tell someone else's story, sure. But he, is struggling with substance abuse, is subsequently homeless, and nope. It's just like the picking and choosing of things.
It is the pool, Kelsi. It's not the pool. It's the dedication to Jehovah. And because Jehovah's Witnesses as individuals are over-identified with that label and their ego is attached to it, which is why you can't criticize the organization without them personally getting defensive, because they are Jehovah's Witnesses. They are the organization. So, brother with the addiction, the substance abuse issues, he has personally basically betrayed your mom.
Right.
Because he has gone against the bylaws of the club of your mom. Whereas the other brother has never committed himself. And so therefore there's still a chance she could get him to change his life and abide by her bylaws. It's about control. It's about getting people to come back to look like you, to think like you, to act like you, to wear the JW.org colored glasses.
Yeah,
it's all about other people being just like you.
Yeah.
And if you're not, if you were and you chose to leave, now it's a personal affront to me. But if you never officially were and you are out there struggling, then maybe I can save you.
Yeah.
And honestly, is the leap So I'm going to say something a little controversial, probably, but is the leap from JW to skinhead that far?
I mean,
The hatred of the
yeah,
LGBTQ community,
yeah,
waiting for someone to exercise. I mean, the only difference is the skinheads might go out and impose the violence themselves. Jehovah's Witnesses are okay with everybody being hurt and killed. They're just waiting for their God to do it.
right, exactly.
I know that's cool. As long as he does it, he murders babies, whatever, people of different beliefs. It's okay. People who don't look and act like them, it's okay.
Oh, that's the thing too. Like when we were younger, when like we would go to school, my mom would tell us when if we were asked about being a witness, she told us to tell children, if you don't become my religion, you're gonna die in Armageddon.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what she would tell us to tell these children.
Yes.
Like I remember telling kids this when I was in like kindergarten.
Messed up. So again, is it that far of a leap?
Oh my gosh. What a number this does on you, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it does a number on human beings to be exposed to this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely destroys lives and families.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Living proof.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, but I am sorry that. Well, I'm sorry that both your brothers are struggling. I wish.
well, my brother now, the one who was in jail, he's out. And he lives in California. We didn't really know each other because he moved out when I was so young. And then a couple of years ago, I went and I visited him, and we just are very, very different people. So we clashed. We just are not. We do. I mean, like, we just don't get along. But I wish him all the best.
Ultimately, just because we're siblings or we're the children of someone, that doesn't mean that we may share DNA, but that doesn't mean we share life outlooks or that personality wise or in any other way we would necessarily be good for one another.
Yeah.
It's just biology.
Yeah. 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 Him and I we don't see eye to eye at all.
I'm not surprised.
We're both just very strong personalities. He's very much like my dad, where he doesn't have an opinion; it's fact when he speaks. And I very much am saying that's your opinion, and he just
Isn't that the JW way too?
I know, but he just really never was a JW.
I know, but he was still exposed to it. So I'm just saying, like, the environment, we're all just born babies. And then we get exposed to certain things. And some people will react in one way, some people will react in another way.
Mm-hmm.
It's really unfortunate the way things happen. Goodness, wow. Sorry your family's been through so much.
Oh my gosh, I know. Oh yeah, we've been through it. We've been through it for sure. It's crazy when you lay it like in this format where you're laying things out one right after another. You're like, yeah, we've been through it. We've been through it.
That's the magic of doing this, is you get your entire story in one nice, neat package.
Oh gosh, I don't know how neat it is, but
at one time, yeah, you see what the contents are, and you see that you have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And again, there's tremendous strength in those who make it out. I wish we never had to be quite that strong at times, but a lot of, again, it's a pretty badass thing to make it out of that and to be able to find yourself.
Yeah. Somewhere. Thank you.
If you want to tell your story on the podcast, buy merch, or get more information, go to shunnedpodcast.com. So obviously your brothers have struggled. So we have been talking about you got baptized or whatever. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned that moment with Jay where you all are talking about how you don't believe it. How did we get there?
So the final straw, for me, and I think for Jay, I can't speak for him. We were on. So a couple years ago, we all lived in Rhode Island, and then a couple years ago, most of my family, well, my mom moved away a while ago, but most of my family moved to Florida. Like my sister with the young kids, and then my other sister, whose kids are grown. She was the first one to go. She's always wanted to live somewhere warm, moved down to Florida. Then my other sister and her husband and their kids followed suit. And we had kind of been talking about that we wanted to change. And we had just always loved Chicago. Like, it's a very accessible city to live in. It's really affordable. Like, and then Jay ended up getting a job opportunity. So we ended up moving here. We would fly down to Florida like a couple times a year to go see the kids. Like, we've always been like very, very involved since they were born. I was in the room for two of the births. Just like would always have them stay at our house, just like super, super, super involved with them since they were born. But when they said they were moving to Florida, I was like, Jay, I can't move to Florida. I can't ever live there. I just can't. It's just, I mean, it's fine that it's for some people. It's just not for me. So anyway, we ended up moving to Chicago, went down there to visit them. And like every time, like ever since we've lived in Chicago, I think Jay tried to kind of stay in a little bit. Like he went to a couple meetings. I went to a memorial here. Like the first year we lived here, that was the last time I ever went in the hall. But we were on this group text with my family. And my one sister who has the grown children, my niece, is a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Her and I are very, very close. We have been since she was a little kid. We just have always had like a very, very special bond where like there's nothing that she could tell me or ask me to do that I would just never judge her for anything. We just have a very, very special, close relationship. Her dad, who's my sister's husband, is a very homophobic person. He's very much a bigot. Likes to say things under the guise of that he's kidding. Well, we were on this group text with like my mom, her husband, who I don't like, but it's another story. Jay was on it, my sisters, basically everybody. And my brother-in-law uses the F slur for someone of the LGBTQ plus community. And I went in on him because you don't use that word. And especially when your daughter is a member of that community. So I kind of lost it. And that is when my family stopped talking to me because I stood up for her and that community. And one of the last conversations that I had with my mom before she stopped talking to me, she said, I know that you've always been supportive of, the LGBTQ plus community. Like it was this horrible thing to be supportive of people for being people and living their life. And I was just like, I'm done. Fully done. Like any little, like I had been done, like, since we'd been here, I hadn't been out in service. I hadn't, studied or gone to meetings. But like when we would go down and visit my family, like we would still kind of like give the illusion that we were in. But I was like, no, I'm not pretending. Like I'm done. Like the hypocrisy of it, of we're supposed to be this loving organization and want to preach to everybody and save everybody. And then you're using this very offensive slur. So it's like, we love everybody and want to save everybody, but not them. Like it's just,
Well, we love them as long as they're not them.
yeah,
Right?
and I have always been like a big ally, as I think you should be, because it's literally just someone living their life in a way that's authentic to them. But that was the last straw, and that is when I got shunned by my family.
It's amazing. Um, it's amazing how, again, skinheads and such, how homophobic that they are. And I can echo some of your story there. One of the last things my dad ever said to me was him calling me on the phone and screaming at me because I quote loved the gays and I quote always took their side
Yeah.
because, and admittedly, I was very homophobic as one of Jehovah's Witnesses for a long time. I'll own that because this is where I came from, what I was taught. And then I started learning and like meeting people and cleaning for people in our cleaning business back then who were gay, and they were awesome. And I started
Yeah.
realizing that I was told a bunch of BS about a bunch of people to make me hate them. I was taught to hate people. I was taught to look at people, to look down on people. And so when my dad later would say things, I would say, oh, I mean, I don't know. I didn't sit at the buffet of sexuality and choose mine. I'm pretty
Exactly.
sure no one else does either. I'm just heterosexual because I'm heterosexual. Like, I just am. No one ever
Exactly.
offered me. I
You
never,
just are.
yes. I wasn't offered like heterosexual drugs one time at a party, and so I became a rabid heterosexual. Like I'm just who I am. That's
Exactly.
it. And they're who they are. And why in the world do we care? And apparently he had held that against me for years. And then when I no longer wanted to be a witness, when I started expressing myself at all, it all came out. He was super angry at me because I had one time taken up for the gay community when he was making fun of them watching an episode of Modern Family.
Oh my God.
So like, they're so awful about this stuff. And is dehumanize other people. That's why it's okay then for them to be killed by your God at Armageddon, because they're not real people.
Well, and then the thing about my sister and her husband, so they've like told my niece that they're not on board with her choices, but they have a son who is also a bigot and is exactly like his dad. And I love my nephew. Do not get me wrong; like he's my nephew. This is what I always say about him: is I love him so much, but I do not like the person that he is.
Well, sure. Humans are complex.
But so a couple years ago, I cut off my relationship with him because he was posting things on his Instagram about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Mm.
So I tried to have a conversation with him, but he
Feels differently.
Yeah, and it was just not a productive conversation. So I was like, I can't continue to have this relationship. Also, my younger nieces and nephews are mixed race. So I'm like, do you not realize the correlation of what you're saying here? Like, your cousins are mixed race. Like, it's bananas. But anyway, so my sister and her husband, my nephew's 27, and he's baptized, has been in several relationships with women that aren't witnesses, has lived with them, several of them. He's currently living in their home with them in Florida. That's just fine because he's straight.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fine.
Yep.
all the things, everything that they say is like, because to a witness, the worst thing is sex. The worst thing ever is sex.
They're so obsessed.
And it's so obsessed. But with him, because he was having a relationship with a woman and he's a man and it was a straight relationship, that's fine. Nothing ever happened to him. Like, I don't know if he ever met with a committee. I mean, I don't believe in that. I don't think he, like, that's all garbage to me anyway. But that's just fine with them, that he can come and live in their house and they're supportive of his choices and his decisions because he's straight. I'm like, my niece is such an amazing, amazing, amazing person. I can't say that enough. I mean, all my nieces and nephews. We just have like this very special, special bond. And she is like the most creative, smart, amazing, thoughtful person that I'm like, I don't know in what world, what her preferences are for who she dates is any type of factor in looking at what type of person she is. Like, it's just, it makes no sense to me.
Absolutely crazy that we as human beings are still living by these antiquated notions and acting them out on each other and calling it love while doing it. It's just it's disgusting. And but I mean, also, again, it's the JW way.
It's just like the hypocrisy of everything is just, I don't know how you, in that organization, how you live with yourself when you see it so blatant, like I don't. From the outside, I know it's so much easier from the outside looking in now to say that, because obviously we all were in it and we all drank the Kool-Aid for a time, but it's like when you're on the outside and you're fully out and you are like okay with that decision to be fully out and you look in, it's like you just can't believe that you ever supported it or went along with it or had these type of thoughts. Like, we're complicit. Yeah,
it's mind-blowing. I mean, I can't speak to everyone's experience. Certainly I've heard many experiences and many would echo it, but for myself, it's mind-blowing to look back at who I once was and to be like, whoa, I believe that? Really? Or I was just that ignorant? But that's when you grow up in a tiny box and you're not allowed to look outside of it, you do what you have to do to survive. And sometimes that involves hating the right people so that you can be loved by the people that you're with, which is a really messed up thing to do, but it's the way you have to be in order to not be hated yourself. So you hate who you're supposed to hate so that you don't become the hated. And it's not until you leave this thing that you realize that, you know what, you could just love everybody and not really really have to hate
just
people.
live your life as a good person and do good things. And
I don't know, if I have to hate people for my God to like me, then I don't like my God.
That is the best way to put it. Yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Yep.
And if my God's gonna kill me because I'm not hating people enough, then fair, go ahead, strike me dead. I'm fine with that because I don't want to worship you.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a nice way to think about it. Well, not a nice way, but it's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. We are, I mean, those of us who are left are, I would say, far more loving and moral than the people in that thing. And I mean, you mentioned, I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses, I've got to put this out there, but I've been wanting to do a series on like JWs wilding out. Jehovah's Witnesses are wild. Jehovah's Witnesses,
we turn up.
Dude, they get turned. They got everything going on inside their four walls, while they're pointing their fingers at everybody else. There are elders having key parties. There are people swinging. There's people reaching out to disfellowship people for threesomes. There's elders on Grinder. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and like they act like they're so And I don't even want to shame the activity
No.
because it's just people trying to figure out who they are and be people. It's just, but that's not who they say they are. They are not the mirage that they put forth into this world at all.
One of my very good friends was at Bethel, and he's no longer in. The stories that he told me about just how many like homosexual relationships there are, which God bless, I love that for you. But the fact that they are trying to come off as like the holiest of the holies living in Bethel, and I'm like, live your life. Like, I love that for you. Have a relationship with this man or do whatever you want to do. But why do you feel the need to like give off that you're this something that you're not, and the thing that you're giving off is making other people feel horrible about themselves?
Well, and that one in particular is really tough because it means, so let's just think it through. You have, gay male members, let's say, of the congregation, obviously sometimes female members as well going to Bethel, but typically it's going to be men, right?
Mhm.
Brothers. You have gay brothers in congregations. They know something about themselves that they have to keep on the down low. And so they're trying to like earn somehow their way into God's good graces by doubling down on everything JW to try to run from who they are, to try to be someone that they're not, to serve hard enough and engage hard enough in the works that lead to salvation that perhaps somehow they could overcome their nature and who they really are. And then they go up there and there's other people who are also doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're overcompensating for something and then they end up finding each other. I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
Wish they could all just be free to be who they are in
Exactly.
actual freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the pressure cooker of all. It's so sad.
It is really sad. Yeah.
It's just devastating again how many men, women, and children have been impacted by this thing and just had their lives turned upside down for so long and who've had to hate themselves in the process.
The only thing that makes me very upset is I've known people that have married people of the opposite sex when they're very clearly not meant to be. And then because you can't get out of a marriage essentially when you're in it, it like ruins this other person's life. And I know of one such circumstance where this person was being very abusive to his spouse because he's living a life that he doesn't want to live. But I'm like, why did you? But it's because that's the expectation.
Mm-hmm. They're trying not to be who they are.
Oh my gosh, it's so. And the thing is that he's not even like a practicing witness anymore. So I'm like, why don't you just go live your life like you want to live your life? But it's because his family is still in it.
So he's still not able to take on his life as his own. He still doesn't feel free to be who he is. He's still stuck. Jehovah's Witnesses get many hooks into you. Mm-hmm. It's the community, it's the culture, these are your people or your family's still there. They're gonna withhold your family from you, or who you are. It's fear of God.
Yeah.
The God that they put forth. It's fear of who am I?
Mm-hmm.
You're taught not to even look at who you are. So it's I'm afraid that I might be someone that I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Because I've not been allowed to express myself or to see who I really am or would be. You're just afraid it's the fear, obligation, and guilt, the fog. You're obligated to all these people and to a God. You feel guilty for even being yourself or having thoughts or feelings that are different than the cult that you're supposed to be. And you're afraid of all the consequences. It takes so much to leave this thing. Is why, again, I say all of us that do are badasses because you have to push back against so much more than just like a doctrine. It's not just about not going to meetings anymore. It's about finally taking a stand for yourself, saying, I am enough as is.
Mhm.
I can need to work on growing and healing in some ways coming from that environment, but I'm enough to be worthy of love and acceptance for who I am. And I'm willing to stand alone on an island if I have to, and to be
Mhm.
me, even though everyone will hate me, leave me, talk bad about me, whatever.
Yeah. No, you're
That's what you have
100%
to be
right.
willing to do.
You do. And I think at some point, everybody will get to that point. But again, yeah, it just takes the courage to just be like, I'm done.
Unfortunately, a lot of people will never get to that.
Well, not the point of leaving, but in their minds, like
Oh, yes.
getting to the point of, I mean, probably not everybody, like you said, pee me, but
I mean, again, we're taught to hate ourselves, to push
right.
away who we really are, and to not be ourselves. So self-love is a hard thing to find for people in general anyway, even harder when you've been taught to actively hate yourself.
And it's just, yeah, the feet, like, again, I mean, that's just the cult mentality is being led with fear. Everything is, that's where the control comes from, is just being afraid of everything.
Well, yeah, you don't matter. You're a byproduct of Adam and Eve. So you're just a sinner from day one. Um, and according to witness doctrine, I mean, other religions might say, hey, God sent his only begotten son to die for you, therefore he's showing you you matter. But
Mhm.
Jehovah's Witnesses do that, but only in a way. I mean, I don't believe in any of it, to each their own, but Jehovah's Witnesses doing it in a way where it's like, yeah, Jehovah sent his son, so you owe him, motherfucker.
Exactly.
You owe him.
Can
You
I-
owe him everything. Your whole life, you're to be a good for nothing slave of Jehovah. You suck. And that's how they come about it. You're just an awful entity. You don't deserve love or anything else. It's undeserved kindness at best.
That's just like one question or one thing that Jay and I have talked about, because we have talked about like the whole thing with Adam and Eve, right? So if God made Adam and Eve, he like poof creates them, puts them on earth, they're perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Why, if they started why are you going to take the one bad thing and say, you know what, I'm going to throw this down on earth where I just put these people? Why would you not just like poof them and get rid of them? It's because you need to be indebted, is number one. And then secondly, if they did make a mistake because you put them in the predicament to make a mistake, why wouldn't you just start over? Why would you just keep on trucking? And we're just going to have imperfection and all this bad stuff's going to happen. And when, no, you could just snap your fingers and start over again. Makes no sense.
If you or I in a congregation know about something that went down that was untoward and we don't tell the elders about it, we would be seen as a share with the wicked one in their works.
Blood guilty or whatever, yeah.
But Jehovah's watching all this go down and has for a long time. And he continues to let it go on. And how many babies need to be raped?
Yeah.
That's my, like, when, like, so you when is it enough? And if you look at, I mean, go back to Adam and Eve. So why would Jehovah even put this tree as a temptation in the garden if imperfection had never existed before?
Exactly.
You would never even have that thought. And if you have the omniscience to have that thought, then maybe you should have looked like, oh, I don't know, a couple years down the road to see how it turned out. Why did your omniscience stop at that point? And ultimately, Jehovah's Witnesses are waiting for this 1,000-year reign.
Yeah.
Right? And everything's going to be brought back to perfection. But then there's going to be yet another sin, another thing when Satan is let loose after the end of the 1,000 years. So mankind and all this is going to fall yet again because we haven't earned it yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And then things will be perfect. But Kelsi, things have never been perfect in heaven.
No. I
Satan
know,
left.
Satan was up there.
Satan left. So Jehovah hasn't been able to create a perfect environment in heaven. He hasn't been able yet to create a perfect environment on earth. Why do we think the next time is going to be perfect?
I
There's
know.
been no perfection that has come from this perfect God yet. Where is the perfection? We haven't seen it yet. It's all imperfect and messed up. And I thought imperfection could not come from perfection.
Right.
Therefore, is God a perfect God? Is Jehovah a perfect God?
No. It's just like when you actually like go down the rabbit hole and you start to think about it, like these questions
Yeah.
of like, how fucking needy is he that he's like, you need, you know what I mean?
Why do you need Mike Shimwell to worship you?
You know what I mean? Like, how needy are you that you just need this constant validation, and you could have just poof made everything just fine, but you're like, no, I need you to own me for this. You know, like it's just
What a
nutty.
what a perfect or what an imperfect father who loves his kids. Let them languish in torment and awful things for
Well, you're asking the wrong girl that question, because my dad would, but you know, keep
I
on.
said, what a loving, healthy father. I didn't just say what a father, because
All
yes, there
right,
are fathers who would. But what a loving father who really loved his kids. If Jehovah's the perfect personification of love,
Yeah,
and love's kind of ugly,
yeah,
and it's a shame because that's, and I know that's not how everybody sees it, and fair enough, but it's an interesting conversation to have, and it cuts to the ways I refer to the concept of original sin as original gaslighting. It's like from there, now we're made to feel we're indebted from the time we're born.
Yep.
And we're already behind the 8 ball and trying to earn something and made to feel like we're not good enough. That's messed up.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy way to see life.
No, not at all. Not at all. Nope. But yeah.
Not serving out of love, that's serving out of fear.
Exactly. But then they always tell you have to fear Jehovah. You have to fear him.
But it's a healthy fear, Kelsi.
But there's no such thing.
No, well, I mean, it's healthy to fear somebody who's going to kill you if you step out of line.
It's so bananas.
It is.
Oh.
It starts to fall apart. But, their narrative, the JW narrative, is one that falls apart under scrutiny. But because people are so afraid, because all the people who are in there are victims of this thing too, they're stuck. And they can't see past it, and it's their identity. It's who they are. So when you leave, so why when people leave, everyone that I work with in my coaching practice, and we have to work on finding your identity. Who are you? What do you want out of this?
Oh, yeah.
You see, because your identity was given to you, and then it was just expected of you.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to be you or to figure out who that is.
Right. Yeah, I'm in that boat. I hear that. I'm figuring that out every day.
Most people are. So can I ask, was the end of your JW, so your family shunned you after these conversations? Has there been a formal, have you all left formally, or are you just shunned because of that?
So, I'm not disfellowshipped. I honestly, and I know every person is different. Like some people want that finalization and they want to know, like, I told them I was out. For me, I feel like they've taken too much from me as it is, that I don't owe them anything. And also because I don't believe it, that I'm like, why am I going to go by your way that you want people to do things if I don't believe it anyway?
Sure.
And again, that's just me. I completely understand and respect when people want that finalization.
Yeah, for me, it was a boundary. I'm going to disassociate and keep all of that away.
Yeah, and I completely can see it that way too for myself. I just was like, I don't owe you anything else.
Sure.
I mean, like, I think one of the brothers here had texted Jay, and Jay had just said, we're not coming back. And he tried to, like, get us to have a formal meeting, and Jay blocked him.
The boundary.
So yeah, no, neither of us are formally anything, which is interesting because they've shunned us and we're not disfellowship technically.
Oh yeah, Jenny and I were shunned before we ever
Yeah.
left. I still kind of believed it in certain ways when I was shunned.
Another thing too that also led up to that too, this was another part of that conversation. Did you ever hear that thing about the boxes that they shipped to each Kingdom Hall like last year, like last November?
You're talking about there was a brochure that was in it.
Right, but they made this big deal about this box. Don't open this box until November 5th or whatever the date was.
Oh yeah.
And so like I think the way that this group text had started, or like I don't remember, was I had said, have you guys heard of these boxes? Because we had seen it on like an ex-JW Facebook thing. And I was just like, this is so ominous and so strange. Like, have you heard of it? And then because we knew about it, we automatically were apostates because we knew about this thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And they didn't.
There's only one way you could have known.
Like, because my mom's husband is an elder and like my brother-in-law is an elder, and we knew about it, and they knew about it because they're elders, but no one else did. But we were asking about it. So it was like automatic apostate because we just asked the simple question. And like that's what made Jay's family stop talking to him, was because we asked that question to them.
Well, and they know that you had to have gotten that information from outside sources because they're not releasing it for the most part. And so it really is when you start asking. I mean, my mom thought I was an apostate and was telling my friends she was worried about me and stuff. And all I was doing was asking honest conversations. I literally at that point had never been on anything apostate in my life.
No.
But this is just a way to, using that term is like, look, I get that there are people out there who are legitimately racist, but also if I just call you a racist, then you're automatically a horrible human being and I no longer have to listen to you or have any real conversations. Just like I call you the label apostate. And so therefore you're an unperson, you no longer matter, nothing you do or say is valid, and I don't have to listen to any of your rhetoric. And so we can, as humans, we can use labels at times. I'm not saying that, again, there are racists. I understand that.
No, I know what you're saying.
But we can, if we get uncomfortable with the conversation or if it bumps up against our way of thinking, we don't want to be open and we're closed completely to any other lines of thoughts, then we can just start shutting people down with labels. And that apostate label is such an easy one. You're an apostate, so you're automatically dangerous.
Yeah, you're like the most dangerous person. Yeah.
Yeah. You worship the devil. You bow at Satan's feet. Like
I
you
know.
are like the worst person in the world for asking a question.
I know. I thought it was such an innocent question. Like, because that's so strange. I'm like, what is this? Like, what is it? And it literally was just such an innocent question. And then all of a sudden we just were like labeled as this. And like now his family won't talk to him because of that. And our families actually, after that conversation, were in communication with each other. And they've never like talked to each other like that before. I was like, I literally...
What?
I was like, I literally just asked a question about a box. Like that was it. That was my question. That was it. That's all I asked. I didn't say anything like there's something wrong with it. I just was asking literally about this box.
All the way back to the beginning of this conversation. You're talking to your mom. It's what your mom told you when you were a kid. At the end of the day, if she has to make a choice between you and Jehovah, she picks Jehovah.
Yeah.
And Jay's parents are Jehovah's too. And so they're getting together, and now they can commiserate over. Now they can even get special attention too. Oh, my son or daughter's an apostate, and then people can. Oh, I'm so sorry that your kids turned aside from Jehovah, and they can get sympathy and they can be victims.
It's just so, I mean, it's just so sad,
It is.
because I especially, like, I think about Jay, who lost his mom to MS, and, like, he always talks about, like, I feel bad because he'll sometimes compare his experience with mine, because I've had, like, a lot, obviously, have had, like, a lot of crazy things happen.
Mhm.
But his mom, he watched her health literally deteriorate while he was growing up in, like, his most formative years. So he's had his own struggles in different ways. It's not any better than, nobody's story is any better or worse than mine. But he literally, like, lost his mom, and then it's a long story with his dad. He got remarried very, very quickly. And then his dad basically, like, disappeared from, and now he's just lost his whole family. And they have always been, like, a very close-ish family, minus his brother. I just feel so bad. Like, for me, my family's always kind of been kind of splintered in general. Like, some of us have been close with each other, but I just feel so bad. Like, he just lost everybody at once.
No, it's horrible, but this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where you see that all of our families. I don't like absolutes.
Yeah.
So high percentage of our families are. All of our families are conditional. They're not. It's never been real love. They don't know how to love. They love, again, people who are just like them.
Right.
But if I'm walking outside and I roll up on somebody with some outstretched arms, I can hug just about anybody. But Jehovah's Witnesses are walking around like little T-Rexes with their little dinky arms out there close together. They can't hug anybody. They don't really have love. They don't know how to love.
Right.
They don't know what love is. To them, love is something that you would only extend to people just like you.
Right.
And if someone's not like you anymore, then they're no longer worthy of that love. I'm not saying Jehovah's Witnesses parents don't care on a level. They care as much as they can, but they can't love. They're incapable of loving. They don't know what it is.
Right. Well, I think, like, that's one thing that I have to say for myself, like, after kind of everything in my life, is that's one thing that I'm very proud of, is that I very much do love people that I love unconditionally. And I think that I have been a good resource for, like, my nieces and nephews, or, like, people in my life that I'm close with who need somebody that they know loves fully and without judgment. And I think, like, that's one thing that I am very proud of for myself, is that with my mom, I always kind of looked at her and said, that's what I don't want to be. She is strong in some ways. I'm not trying to take that away from her, but there were so many things that I looked at and said, I don't want to be like that. And I'm so happy that I have stuck by that, kind of, and haven't fallen into those same patterns. Yeah, but that's one thing. Like, I just had this, my nieces were just here visiting us, and that's a conversation that I had with both of them, my grown nieces, was how we were raised very conditionally. And I just said, I hope you both know how much I love you unconditionally. There's nothing that would ever make me love you less. And, like, they do know that. And I'm so glad that that is something that didn't carry over into me.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing to be able to give to others. One of the things that I see is that for most of us, the area, if we're going to lack in that love, is towards ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have the same unconditional love towards ourselves. As I like to say, perfectionism, which many of us walk away from the cult with, perfectionism is conditional love for oneself.
Yeah.
And that's something that most of us are trying to work on. It's definitely something that was given as a byproduct of, again, that environment, trying to keep people happy. But being able again to love people well is a beautiful thing to be able to offer. And if Jehovah's Witnesses love themselves well in a healthy way, then they wouldn't put up with the things that they do.
Yeah.
They don't, so therefore they allow themselves to be treated like they are. That's a shame.
That
Nobody should
is.
have to live a whole life that way.
I know. Yeah.
So, can I ask today then? So you are shunned by them.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything you could say to them, is there anything that you would say if you had the opportunity to say something to those that shun you?
I mean, like, to my mom, I would just tell her I love her. Like, we obviously have not had the best relationship. My dad, there's not really much that I would say to him. We kind of had like a final conversation. He's not in, but like,
Sure.
I kind of like had a very final conversation. He's had some health issues, and I feel okay with where we left things. Like I said, things that I needed to say to him. So there's not really much that I would say to him. My nieces and nephews that are in, just that I love them and I miss them and I'll always be proud of them, and I hope that I get to see them again and hug them and kiss them and love them, and just like my sister, their mom, just that I love her, and I hope that she remembers what type of people Jay and I are and what we've been to the kids, and just how kind of unfair it is that they've been taken from us when nothing about us has changed. And then just my other sister, I just want to shake her because she has this daughter that's so amazing and is such an incredible person, and because of this stupid thing that you can't get past, you just don't appreciate her, and like it's just so ridiculous. And like, I think the other thing I would say to her is like, you need to speak and think for yourself, because so often she lets her husband just speak for her and think for her. And she'll try to say like she's a very strong person, but like when there's any type of anything, she'll just let him step in and speak. And his opinion is her opinion. So, I mean, I know that's a lot, but that's what I would say.
No, that's no. You addressed different individuals. I like that. And I mean, certainly, just thinking about your sister there. I mean, there's the cult of many, and then there's also the cult of one. When you're married to someone and you let them speak for you, make your decisions and things like that. A lot of JW relationships, a lot of JW families are little cults inside the greater cult. It's just, it rolls downhill, and this is just how we were taught to be in relationship with each other, and it's really unfortunate for everybody involved. But I I'm really happy that your niece gets to be who she is today, and
Me too.
that's the important thing. Other people, it's unfortunate. Most of us are going to leave, and we're going to go. There's a ship that's going to set sail from the dock, and unfortunately, where our ships go, there's many people that were once in our lives that, they don't have a boarding pass. They can't get on that ship. They're not ready to. They may never be ready to. We have to accept that and move on with our lives, and not be afraid to grow and to live just because other people are afraid to and they're stuck.
Yeah.
So let's talk then about your life a little bit today. I mean, just like, as you've moved on, what do you enjoy about your life today? What's good in Kelsi and Jay's world today? What do you like? Anything you want to do?
I think like one thing that is so nice is like it's just like a weight has been lifted. Like you don't have to even pretend to be slightly involved in any of this anymore. Just like truly living authentically as ourselves is so nice. Like just letting go of all of those little parts that were indoctrinated in you and just being like an accepting person and just trying to be a good person every day and not think, well, if someone sees me doing this or they think this or, like just that freedom of just being yourself and living your life in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, in the extra bonus content for the Patreon subscribers, we talked about a festival that you guys enjoy and that you get to go to that I don't think your family would be joining you at.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Some would.
Some would. The right ones would, but just the ability to be free to go like what you like in life, to meet who you want to meet, to love who you want to love.
Right.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to have a life different than that. And I'm glad that you guys get to be free to live your lives as Jay and Kelsi.
Yeah, we're happy too. We're very happy.